John Nelson, and you're listening to the Starting Block Podcast. Guys, this is a show for complete athletic development. As you know, our mission is to give you the tools to win, whether you're the athlete, the parent, or the coach. As always, here with my co-host, Chris Scarborough. Good afternoon, sir. What's up?
Good afternoon, guys.
Guys, if you are new to our show, we are slightly different than your standard podcast, all right? We actually have kind of multiple shows within the show, different types of episodes. So first episode you're going to get from us will be our bi-weekly Q&A. That's where we will answer the questions you guys submit to us at
info@startingblockpodcast.com.
Guys, that can be anything about the training, the performance, the neuro stuff, any of our guests that you might have listened to and you have some questions on. Fire those to us, and we'll be happy to tackle them. We've got a good chunk of questions blocked out here for the next couple Q&As, so keep sending them in, guys. We appreciate it. Don't mind if you DM them to us, that's fine, but if you can email them to us, that definitely helps. So that's Q&A. The next episode is a bi-weekly one as well. That's our guest interview. That's what we have today, and I'll bring our guest on in just a second. But that's just like every other podcast on the planet, guys. That's where we're going to bring in our friends, our colleagues from across the globe at this point, and they're going to share their stories of success, what they do with their clients, their athletes, their patients in their gyms and their clinics, and give you insight into what they do to help their population and community win. And ultimately, like I always say, it becomes a great opportunity for you to network with some of the other people out there that share the same core values and mission that we do here. And then that final episode you'll get is maybe a quarterly episode, Friday Fire episode for me, just 10, 20 minutes, 30 minutes maybe of me just giving you a little bit of guided wisdom, as I like to call it these days, with maybe a little fire behind it. It's about something maybe happened to me, something I think some of you younger coaches might benefit from. I mean, I got a lot to learn, no doubt, but been doing it about 16 years now, so I feel like there's a couple things I can share, and hopefully if I can help you guys any way I can. That's kind of what that episode's about. Remember, guys, we ask that, we're not running ads or anything right now, so if you don't mind, we just ask you, if you got value out of this, just pay your dues and share the show. Please help us grow this. This is it's a mission. This is a project. We are trying to change the way that things are done in our community. There's just too much bullshit out there with social media. Everybody's got a voice, which is a good and a bad thing, I think. And I think a lot of our athletes, coaches, parents think they got to decipher through the information, and it can be a lot. It can be overwhelming, and so our mission is to change that and get you guys the real stuff. So please share it if you don't mind. I think that wraps up the housekeeping stuff, and I think we're ready to get rolling. So that might be record time there.
Yeah, let's go.
So, yeah, guys, as you can tell, we got a very special guest on for part 2, Mr. Brad Arnett. What's up, bro? Welcome back. How are you?
Thanks, Brad.
How are you guys doing? This is great to be on. I always enjoy these. I enjoy the conversation with like-minded people. And, again, if we can invoke thought in somebody or basically solidify what you're doing is good stuff, I guess we're doing our job, and that's what I look forward to doing.
Cool. Well, I appreciate it, man. Guys, if you haven't checked out the first episode that Brad joined us on, I want to say it was in about this time last year. So it's been about a year ago. You're going to have to dig a little bit. He was one of our first guests to come on, but I encourage you to go listen to that. We definitely got into a lot of just kind of philosophy, mentality type stuff. And as I've said before, Brad, that's one of the things I respect immensely about you and your facility is, I'm fired up anytime you speak, man. Like, are you not a professional speaker? Do you go out and do that? I don't even play football, and I want to come play football for you.
No, occasionally I do. I'll get asked to come in and do different presentations. I spoke last year at the Wisconsin Football Coaches Association, which is up in Middleton on the other side of Madison. I always enjoy doing those to different high schools. They'll have me come in and do some talks about different training and things that are going on. So I would say probably in the last 4 to 5 years, I've done more of them than I have in the past, but I enjoy them. And I always like to keep things in an open forum that, it's just my opinion and I base it off of experience, right? And you could talk to 50 different people and get 50 different things. But the thing I guess I always look at is just justification. I do this because of this, and it's based on this, and there's different ways to kind of go about that, and that's what I try to, especially when I talk with high school coaches, is to give them something that they can take away and utilize in their weight room. and help the kids that much more. So
Great.
So yeah, so like I said, it's been about a year since we've connected. What's new with you, man? What's new up at up at the facility? What's new, going on with you? I mean, we haven't talked in a while, so yeah. How's life up there?
Life is good. As I said earlier, we're in the middle of a shit storm. We're getting a lot of rain, which switched to snow. So it's our typical late winter. I don't even know if it's late winter. It seems like every year our winter doesn't really start consistently till January, February, March. So
yeah.
Our spring sports suffer for a little bit. But really, other than that, last Saturday we actually hosted our first Strongman competition, which was a lot of fun.
Oh, sweet.
Nice.
It was great. So I want to say between contestants and spectators, we had about 170 people that were here. And we had a food truck that was here. We had a beer truck, which went over well.
Of course.
It was a lot of fun.
That is really cool.
Support each other. It was great.
Now, because in your gym, obviously you have a huge athlete population with that. But last time I was up there 10, 12 years ago, you also have like a membership style as well, don't you?
Yeah.
Is that correct?
We have. So the membership style is we have. People that compete in weightlifting, so Olympic lifting, that come in and they'll go to various competitions and they'll train with us and they'll use the facility. We've got some power lifters that'll do some work with us as well. And I want to say probably in the last 3 years, the strongman side of it has really grown, and it's been a lot of fun.
So that's what I was going to ask. So, like, you have a big strongman population, at your gym now.
It is getting bigger and bigger. And one of my assistants, Jake, he's actually had his pro card for quite a while. He's had it for quite a few years now, and so he's well known in the community around here and statewide. And the competition that we did was really well received, and it's been a lot of fun to. Work with the guys that come in with various things that they want to do, and then to see them obviously put it to work in a competition was a lot of fun.
Is this something then that you spearheaded, or is this something that this athlete you were talking about? Is it something that he came to you and said, "Hey, Brad, I've been doing this strongman thing for a while. You got the great facility," and maybe he talked you into it? I mean, how did this come about?
Well,
develop it?
Jake is actually an assistant for me. And he's been with me since August of our first year. So he's been with me since August of 2005. And so through the years, he was into powerlifting and stuff. And then he started to transfer it into more strongman and started doing more and more competitions and started winning them and went to some national competitions and then actually went to some international competitions and eventually got his pro card. And as he grew in that, started obviously attracting more people and wanting to know what he's doing and where he's training. And so through the years, it's just continued to grow. And throughout the state of Wisconsin, there's a fair amount of competitions of strongman that different people will host. And so we said, hey, what the heck, let's do our own. So it was a battle at the warehouse. And it was a lot of fun. Yeah, we had a great time doing it.
Now, have you seen an increase in attention and popularity of strongman compared to, say powerlifting?
I don't want to say an increase. I think it's really always been there. I think I'll put it to you this way. I think it's stayed steady, in that you don't see as much coverage nationally as you used to. Like you could go on ESPN and they were always hosting like regional competitions and national competitions and things. You used to see a lot of that, and now you don't quite get as much of that as you used to in the past. I mean, I think
that's because Caitlin Clark is coming in and stealing all the ESPN ratings from everybody.
Right? Exactly. So, I mean, I think when they started televising like the Arnold Classic, and they incorporated into that more of a strongman presence, along with powerlifting and bodybuilding. Obviously, they're kind of covering all the different facets of training. Other than that, you'll see some international type things. Once in a while, they'll throw out some old archive competitions. But I think it's always had its roots and it stayed steady. Whereas like you look at something like CrossFit exploded, right? And then it's kind of backed off and then it's kind of staying its course a little bit. So I think strongman's always been there.
I feel like Brian Shaw coming along and just really made it, and maybe with social media, as well, but he just made it more relatable to people, I feel like. And because, I mean, he's very well versed and educated, and, it made it relatable to people, I feel like. And I think that helped the sport a ton.
Oh, I agree. He's just an everyday guy. I mean, he's a mammoth. I mean, this guy's like a bullet grenade.
Right.
But, Brian's done a great job of incorporating a lot of different trainers, strength coaches, and just giving different perspective in his way of attacking training, and obviously incorporating more people that, I mean, let's be honest, you're moving an extreme amount of weight in various different ways. You're carrying it, you're lifting it, you're bracing it, you're whatever you're doing with it, stuff's going to break down. So rehabbing and going through that process, and him making that, like you said, social media, making that available and people able to kind of see his journey, I think has definitely helped a lot as well too. So
I think I saw a video of him somewhere on YouTube of using the ARP to help rehab his hamstring. Absolutely. And we talk about ARP and newbie all the time. Here. So that's cool.
I think he's been true to the standpoint too that everybody I guess when you get notoriety, everybody and their brother comes out of the woodwork, right?
Yeah, I'm sure.
I want you to sponsor this and sponsor that and do this and do that, and I think he's done a really good job of actually using the products and seeing if they work on him and getting opinion of other people that might have used it and having them come in and help him use it so that he's getting the full benefit of it. And so he's going to endorse and use the things that he's had success with and has really helped him, so that I think when he does that and people call and ask, like you said, he's an educated guy. He can actually give you sound information that's been based on his own experience, and it's worked. And I think that's a huge plus to him as a person, and obviously to the field.
Yeah, absolutely.
So let's get into, you're what I would say the GOAT of strength and conditioning for football. So, I know, we just had, pro days and combines, and, it's been a year. We've gone through a full football season again since we talked. So I don't know, man, I want to pick up there. Like, how did things go over, the course of the season? What'd your combine days look like? Pro days? Like, let's talk some football shop, man.
Well, when it comes to the combine training, it's, you get these guys that come obviously from different college programs, and everyone has they're coming out of different training philosophies, and a lot of it has been based on a lot of max effort work in the weight room, right? Got to get stronger, and it's a lot of max effort, and it's pulling a lot, and it's pushing a lot. And, you couple that with the volume of running and all the different things on top of playing the sport. Guys come in with different things going on. So they may have finished their career. They might have finished with their team in a postseason game. Obviously, there's more and more guys that aren't doing that as much. So if they're a projected, say, first day guy, they may not play in a postseason game with their team for fear of injury, and it can affect their draft status and so on and so forth. But I find it when these guys come in, you have to assess them, and you've got to look at where they're at. So you're looking at from their feet all the way up to their shoulders, and you're getting a background, a history of what they've dealt with in the past through their time at their school, whether it's especially with lower extremity, hip and knee and ankle type things, which is always going to leave you susceptible to some posterior chain type things, hamstring and whatnot. But you start with that process, and I think you have to go through that process, at least in the beginning, to try and get the body from a prehab standpoint, not necessarily always a rehab standpoint, but taking what you normally do in a rehab situation and applying it to a prehab situation. And the thing I talk about that is, in today's society, kids play and play and play and play. And people are parents are investing their discretionary income in these for-profit club teams. We've all been exposed to it. And so that discretionary income is going to kids that are practicing once a week, and they're playing 12 games on a weekend. And development is limited, and shit's going to break down. Something's going to happen. So they play till they get hurt, and then they get applied to physical therapy, and the first thing they apply is strength conditioning. So why not have some type of concept or some type of variable in place? And it doesn't have to be weight room related. It can be taking what the PTs do from a rehab standpoint to get your body functioning back together, getting things working together, relieve some of that pain, get some things, getting more things called in to what they need to use, so to speak, from a musculature standpoint. But why not take that concept and utilize it in pre-workout type things, making sure that things are turned on, things are working correctly. You know, if you got to reset posture a little bit, you're incorporating some of that in. Because I've always found that, you know, load exasperates the problem. So if a kid's standing there and you already know that, you know, they're anterior tilted and their ass looks like it's climbing up the small of their back, if things are preloaded and you start axial loading them, that load is only going to exasperate the problem. So just going through that process of getting some things opened up and called into the picture goes a long ways, and I think that plays a big role in my approach and what I do with guys that come into me from a pro day standpoint. In getting them to understand, guys, listen, our goal isn't max effort. So you go out to your pro day and you perform awful. You run bad, you jump bad, you do all these things, and you look at the guys and you're like, yeah, but I just squatted 700 pounds. And they go, that's great, but you can't move, you can't bend, you can't help us. And so I think the mistake that a lot of people make.
I'm going to interrupt you there real quick because I just want to say before we get too far down that road, is like, you made a really good comment right there about these, you know, I guess the scouts or whoever is there. Like, you may be able to squat a house, but you can't move, you can't help us. Do you feel like you've seen like a change in that type of mentality, like in a good way? I feel like it's always been about how much you can lift, not about how much you move.
Well, I think I've seen a shift of that in the private setting of guys that are working with athletes outside of the college setting. I haven't necessarily seen a big change of that across the board in college settings. And that's not always, and when I say that, that's not a knock on the strength coach, okay? Because you're still answering to a head coach. And these coaches have, I mean, let's be honest, your head coaches, a lot of them, they know the grounds crew job better, and they know the athletic training job better, and they sure as hell know your job better. So in their mind, they think, I've got to have all my linemen, they got to bench press 400, and they got to squat 700, and that's what they're looking for. So it kind of handcuffs some of these guys in the fact that it forces them to bypass some of these things and really push the load because that's what the head coach wants.
Right.
Again, I've had guys call me in the past and like, hey, they refer to the head coach as the old man. Okay, so the old man wants all these linemen to bench 400. What am I supposed to do? Well, go online and find the most screwed up conversion chart you can find. That if a kid benches 185 for 12, he's a 405 bench. So train them right. Give them the numbers you want. Give them something that you've based it on. But it's hard. I mean, it is. You've got a head coach that's pushing in, and they want these numbers, and that's what it comes down to is that it's a number game, and it's become somewhat a survival of the fittest game. That if we can work hard and move a lot of weight, that we're going to be successful, and vice versa. I look at it from the standpoint: our job should be: are these kids available to play on Saturday, to play on Friday? Because ultimately, that's what it comes down to. And people say, well, okay, so they talk about max effort. Well, what is it about max effort? And I always, here's my way of explaining it, is if you look at a guy that starts on defense, okay, just an example, in a college setting. So he's in the game for every down that they're on defense. And at the end of the game, let's say they're on the field for 75 plays, just an example. Well, those 75 plays are 75 max efforts that they've got to do to play the game. And it's not just reactionary. You're taking on contact. You're delivering contact. There's a lot of variables that are getting thrown at you during the course of the game. So I always ask people, if what you're saying to me is that max effort in the weight room consistently is important, are you telling me that you're going to guarantee that if I'm going to train a guy, a college football player, if he squats 405, and I'm going to go through this progression so that he can squat 450, 500, you're going to tell me that that's going to ensure that this kid's going to be a better player on the field and he's going to be able to withstand 75 to 80 all max effort plays during the course of a game? And very few people have been able to justify to me or explain that to me that this is how they do it. Because we all know that you want to move heavyweight, and you want to have max effort, you're not going to do that by doing a ton of volume. You're going to move a lot of weight. You're going to limit your volume. You're going to spread it out over more sets. So, yeah, you're going to get some work capacity with that. But the problem is with that is that a lot of people will bypass that GPP phase. You've got to be in shape, right? You've got to be in shape. You've got to have something in the tank to pull from. If you're going to sit there at 75 to 85, 90% of a 1-rep max and you're going to do multiple sets with that, you got to be able to handle that. And that's not just technically grooving the exercise, but you got to have the work capacity to be able to come back for multiple sets to do that. And yes.
So let's kind of stay along that same line. What do you notice then? Okay, so they come in, they're strong. You've got a limited amount of time to work with them to get them prepared for their pro day or their combine or whatever. What are the kind of the biggest needs you see that people come in that need? What do they need? I mean, just pure mobility. Well, do they need more? Where do they need the most of?
So people forget the fact that in order to get a soft tissue response, you need to get a neural response first. And so when you look at like ankle mobility, getting their feet stronger, okay? Getting their feet stronger will definitely teach them how to load their feet and change foot pressure in itself will open up ankle mobility. But what I see is the lack of, let's use back squat as an example. So when you back squat, what are you using? Well, you're using quad, you're using glute, you're using hamstring, you're using upper back integrity, and that's going to be affected by hip mobility or hip positioning and ankle mobility. So what I see missing is the attention to detail or the attention to really working that musculature from an isolation standpoint to promote a mobility standpoint in order for these guys to get more out of what they're doing. So I see guys that come in that, yes, they can put a shit ton of weight on their back and they can move it, but when they're done, they feel like somebody took a mallet and just beat the shit out of their body. They've got this, so when you take a kid like that and you put him into a sprint standpoint, so let's work on straight line speed. Well, it's the same thing in sprinting. Kids can't sustain hip positioning, and that's what affects straight line speed. So all these kids have this default pattern where they're constantly passively extending or arching their low back. So they come out of their start, their low back arches, which preloads the hamstring. It shortens the stride down, so they stand straight up. And they're susceptible to hamstring mobility. It lacks the hamstring mobility. And then it's relying on glute integrity. Well, glute integrity isn't there. So now these kids are at risk. And people will look at me and say, well, it's kind of counter-conduitive. You're going to get glute activation and all these things sitting in a rack, whether you're front squatting or back squatting, you're going to get it in there. No, you're not. And the reason I say that is because kids are already starting predisposed to faulty patterns as far as posture and the way their hips sit and how they're doing it. So if a kid is preloaded in the hamstring, it can only give you so much more space. So you get to a certain point, you're bending at the waist. So you think you're getting low, but you're getting low by putting your chest on your thighs. Now, granted, that's an exaggeration, but that's what it comes down to. So you're really not even engaging glute, hamstring from a load standpoint. So now you couple that with time constraints. You only got so much time with them in the weight room. A lot of these things that are pre-warm-up, whether it's low threshold or loaded, isolating. Simple RDL, soft knee bend, you can isolate more glute. A little stiffer knee bend, you're going to get more hamstring. Those things get bypassed, and you're just trying to accomplish a ton of things with one exercise, and it just doesn't work that way. So it's what I see as guys lacking is, okay, you've squatted, you've benched, you've done these things, but what are you using during these exercises that need to get caught up to do things more? It's like bench press. It's not uncommon for me to see a lot of guys that come in, and when they're bench pressing, you'll see the left trap pop, the elbow will flare, and everything's going to the right side. And people are like, oh my God, there's something going on with the right shoulder. No, it's they're in their chest. Okay, so their pec is super tight. It's pulling them forward. So now their rotator cuff is weak. Their hamstring is weak. Or I should say hamstring because they look at a shoulder like a hip, but their tricep is weak, and they can't stabilize that scap. So the anterior serratus is not involved. And so you're looking at it from a standpoint of everything on the left side is all shoulder. So it's shifting everything to the right. And that's where you're running into problems. So you can see it once they get to a certain load. So I'm looking at it from a standpoint, okay, if we're doing dumbbell bench and I see this left trap constantly doing it, why would I ever put a bar in their hand? Because you're putting them at risk for shoulder issues. You know, when it comes to bench, I look at it this way too. You know, if you guys think about this, years and years ago, the main primary measurement of upper body strength was a standing press, right? Remember that in the old strength days? It was always the standing press, whether the push press or strict press. And not until the bench press became this, then, you know, it's the normal question, hey, how much can you bench? It's this, you know, so it's become the main staple of measuring upper body strength that all of a sudden now we've started seeing all these chest injuries and all these shoulder injuries because you're in a position flat where you're bringing weight down. And if you don't have the scap stability, the hip mobility to actually set your hips correctly and set an arch and actually keep your shoulders packed, it becomes a shoulder exercise basically in a vulnerable position, and it's affecting a lot of kids' shoulder integrity. And now you get into labral issues and a lot of other things. So that's what I see when guys come into me. It's the lack of things that they have to use in order to squat, but things that have to be in place in order to sprint better. And I'll even go as far as this. People, when they see somebody run super fast, okay, so they got a great time. We're talking about the combine, we're talking about pro days, and this guy pops a great time. And everyone looks at them like, man, that kid must be really strong in the weight room. So they relate strength in the weight room to speed on the field. When, in my eyes, I relate it differently. In the fact that I relate straight line speed to help the weight room. And I look at it this way. As kids get more efficient in sprinting, it's neural drive, right? You're applying force to the ground, and it's all neural efficiency. And I've seen it so many times. When you get a kid or an athlete that starts to hold position better, you see the neural efficiency that much more. Without even realizing it, in the shorter period of time, you'll see the weight that they're using in the weight room go up, go up, go up. So I correlate it differently. If a kid's running really fast, now granted, one big component that's going to come into that at times is something you can't train, and that's called genetics. They're coming from a genetic pool that it is what it is. But I see kids that run really well and have neural efficiency. That definitely correlates and affects what you're trying to do with them in the weight room. Because you guys know what you guys have seen it. You look at a guy that can, he can squat a shit ton in the weight room, and you put him out on the turf, and he looks like a baby giraffe trying to run down the turf, right?
Right, yeah.
And so the emphasis has always been on the weight room. And sometimes when you get into that emphasis, positioning's not held, and you're starting to develop faulty movement patterns and absorbing load and how you are absorbing and how you're applying it from the ground up versus the other way around. So I kind of look at things differently than other people do, and
we do too. You're on the right show for that. Then
definitely.
You know, the old adage that he looks like Tarzan but he plays like Jane, or he looks like Tarzan but he runs like Jane. Not that female athletes can't run, but it's that concept that you see it all the time. A guy is really, really super strong in the weight room, and you think, man, and it can be even a kid that's 220 pounds, 225 pounds. He's a linebacker type kid, right? Super strong in the weight room, but you get on the turf and he can't run, he can't move, he can't apply force to the ground. And once you get to a certain distance, there's no air under the feet. You're not seeing any amplitude of them driving themselves forward.
Yep. That goes into the conversation, Chris, that we had with Tony Holler, which
yes.
We're going to have to redo that episode. We had some recording technical problems, but why don't you ask the question, Chris, because you know where my brain's going right now, right? Like, do we even need it? Do we even need the street? Like, you're the speed guy. You ask that question.
Yeah, well, it really just kind of comes along because Tony's a big proponent of. He's very general in the weight room, meaning he wants to get them generally strong, but nothing in the weight room replaces. You should never do anything in the weight room that's going to inhibit what you're doing. In his case, on the track, because he's a track guy, right? Nothing you do in the weight room should hinder what you're doing on the football field. Doesn't mean don't go in the weight room and get strong. It just means don't use it to hinder. So John and I were even bringing up the question, in order to be a great athlete, football player, track athlete, whatever, do you even have to, not saying you can't, but do you have to even go in the weight room?
If you're talking purely football, I think from a protection standpoint, I think you need to. Because here's the thing. There's one thing that you can't mimic, and that's contact. So shoulder stability and scap stability, and obviously doing things to keep hamstrings healthy, ankles healthy, knees healthy, those are all things that can be developed in the weight room. But I agree with you 100% from the standpoint of, I look at it this way, which is going to be the same thing that you're saying. Your body only functions one way. Your job in the weight room is to help that function that way as efficiently as possible. And that's not always under max load. So people talk about plyometrics. Plyos are important. I do a ton of them. But you also have to understand that the fastest plyometric, the most powerful plyometric you can do is a sprint. So you want to get better at sprinting, do the sprint. You got to run, right? So you want to get better at football. People come in all the time and they ask for it. Well, I want football specific. I want basketball specific. I want this. I want that. Well, go play. That's your specific adaptation that you're doing for your sport. The purpose of the weight room, you're right, isn't to hinder. It should be an enhancement to allow them or help them practice more, play more, hopefully injury-free. And if something does happen, the time coming back or maybe the severity will be less. But it has to be done in a way where it is generalized. Like golf coaches, they're just doing things in the weight room that a football player would do. Well, look at it from the standpoint of whether you're doing a trap bar RDL or a bar RDL, even a dumbbell RDL. You look at it from the side, what does that mimic? Well, that's them addressing the ball. So, you're just trying, if you do it in a way where it's generalized, you're just trying to help kids with a progressive overload maintain positioning to apply that to what they're trying to do. So, that's how I look at it. I think that, people say, well, a football player isn't a power lifter. You're right. And they're not an Olympic lifter. You're exactly right. But you need to train them from a standpoint of general that they're, if nothing else, when you're doing movement, it's, especially when kids are younger, it gives you a referral point. So you get into a squat position, whether you're doing something with a kettlebell or a dumbbell, okay? So you do that first, and then you come over and let's say you're going to work on stepping off a 12-inch box and you're going to land and hold your position. You can give them a referral to that, okay, we just did some dumbbell squats. That's the position I want you to land in when we step off this 12-inch box. Simplicity, things like that can give you a reference point. I think that's very beneficial. But, in that same line, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think you just said the key word right there. In fact, it's one of the things that John and I were discussing yesterday before we had you on, and that is, you might think of yourself, or I think our audience would look at Brad Arnett and think, oh, Brad's just a strength guy. Or they would look at me and they go, oh, Chris is just a speed guy. No, you know what both of us are? We're position first. Mm-hmm. Okay. The second thing, it just so happens that beyond that, my second priority would be velocity. Brad might be, once you get position right, I might start loading it, or whatever. But the truth is, Brad, and correct me if I'm wrong, that for you, velocity is still exceptionally important, just like for me, strength is exceptionally important. But position is still going to be the underlying foundation for no matter what.
100%. It totally is. And so when you look at it from this standpoint, let's say that you and I are at the same school and you're not in the weight room, but you're the track guy and I'm the guy in the weight room. Where kids really get the true benefit and they internalize what's happening and what they need to learn from a position standpoint, from a strength standpoint, is that I'm applying positioning of what they need when they're on the track with you. And then when they're on the track with you, you're reinforcing the positioning that's coming from the weight room, and this is why you're doing that, to utilize it in this drill or in this drill, and ultimately you're integrating it into a full sprint. So that's where I think the true connection comes, is having a performance coach and a sport coach that are utilizing each other and in reinforcing each other that, listen, this is why we're doing what we're doing, and this is what I need to see you start to get to, whether it's on the track or on the field or on the court or in the swimming pool, the wrestling mat, whatever it might be. That's where I think the true connection between the two really comes together.
Right. Agreed.
Now, we're talking about the pro days and combines, and I think we'd be remiss not to mention what we just saw with the 40, which you saw me digging around on my desk and my phone. I could not find the guy's name, but I finally found it. Xavier Worthy setting the combine record. I mean, I think it just goes into the conversation of strength versus speed, its influence. I mean, because you look at the guy. Now, maybe the guy's strong as an ox. I don't know. But I don't know. Just curious to hear your thoughts on what we witnessed there.
Well, when you look at it from a combine training standpoint, so I'm assuming that he probably left school and he went to a private facility and worked on training. He didn't come into the training facility running a 4.7 and then go to the combine and run a 4.22. That's just not how it works.
Right.
Or you're going to have a guy that comes in running a 4.6 and he gets to the combine, he's going to run a 4.38. I mean, I'd even go as far to say you're going to have a guy that's running a 4.6, and by the time you get to running, he's running a high 4.4. I mean, to me, that's just not. I mean, you can improve a guy by a tenth, maybe a tenth and a half. You can see some improvement because you got to look at the time spent. You got maybe 6 weeks, sometimes 8 weeks, especially if you're dealing with a kid that played in a postseason bowl game, and then they come back and let's say they got a combine invite. You might have a week and a half with them. 2 weeks maybe at the most, and then they might go to the Senior Bowl or they might go to another Exposure Bowl, okay? So now you lose another week and a half. So by the time you're done with it, you're getting this kid ready to go to a combine and run a decent time with maybe a month's training. There's not a whole lot you can do to adjust a kid's technique in running in a month when you're going from what he's used to doing on the field to now he's got to have this track mentality and you're running like you're running ultimate speed down a track. It's very, very different. It's very technical. And there's a lot of things that you need to ingrain and change in their mindset and their mentality because you're also dealing with things that have never been emphasized to them. And they've been, I guess, how do I say this? And I know you're going to agree with me on this. I see a lot of this all the time. Like, you'll go in, people have me come in and watch what they do. And they'll spend 45 minutes doing drill work. And that's the end of the work. And it's like, okay, well, I get it. But at some point, you got to let the kid run. So you can isolate components, but in the same breath, you have to incorporate it. And you can't, I find it that people sometimes are trying to make robots. And some kids do things to me that I look at, they do things naturally that are really, really good. I look at it as natural, and I don't get hung up on it because I think it's how the body functions and works. I don't even bring it up to them. I won't even emphasize it to them. I just let them do it. And then again, it's not like we don't do drill work, but we do it. And then when the kids run, it's not like I'm yelling out in the middle of a 30-yard sprint. I'm yelling out things for this kid to correct. Well, that's just not.
Yeah, good luck. That's not going
right?
to happen.
It's not like in the middle of a sprint they're going to auto-correct. It's just not going to happen. So when they run the sprint and they're walking back, just give them a couple of reminders. And it may be one reminder. And over time, they're going to get it. And I think that's the concept, too, that you deal with is that everybody thinks that in 6 weeks, 7 weeks, 8 weeks, this kid's going to be a 4.4 guy. And it's just not the way it works.
Right.
And so I know I've told this story before about this, the concept of time development, right? And it happens over time. And you've got to ingrain things. When I was at Arizona, we used to have Canadian and European track teams that came in for winter training trips. And we got done at the end of the week, and we went to happy hour. And we're sitting there, we're talking, and I said, all right, guys, what's this whole Eastern versus Western bullshit that we always read all the time, right? So Eastern does this, and Western does that. And I'm like, I've seen you train your athletes for a week. You've seen me train my athletes for a week. And at the end of the day, let's look at it from the purity standpoint. There's a correct way to do it. So there's a right way to squat. There's a right way to push. There's a right way to weight push to your chains. There's so many different ways you can do this stuff. But there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And you can apply little different things here and there, whether it's bands or chains or, that's a whole nother conversation. But, there's things you can do with that. And I said, so what's the biggest difference? And without hesitation, they looked at me and they said, because we understand the concept of time development. We know that if a kid's 14 years old, by the time he's 16, 17, 18 years old, they got it. It's going to be there. We know that it's not going to happen in 12 weeks. It's not going to happen in 24 weeks. It's going to happen over time. And ever since ever since that time, that's always stuck with me in my head from the standpoint, especially when it comes to movement. We can do drill work, but we have to incorporate it into letting them do it. And same thing with doing change of direction drills and deceleration type stuff. I just want a kid to walk out of here with a toolbox, and they're going to figure out what works best for them. But whatever it is, I want them to at least be close enough where they're getting the benefit of it. They understand it. They're not at risk. But they, over time, are going to figure out in their sport which way works best for them. And I don't want to sit back and say, no, you can't do that. It has to be this way. And the kid's struggling with it because it just doesn't click, or mechanically it's not the right way for them to do it. And at the end of the day, they do it their way. It's a faster time anyways. So let them do it. I mean, to me, that's what it comes down to. So when you look at it from a combine training standpoint, to answer your question, that kid's a genetic freak. And he came into college fast. He maintained that fast. He probably got a little bit faster than he was in college, which is, coupling sprinting and doing that work. And he might have been at the time at his school, he might have ran some track. He might have been on the track team. So he was maintaining that concept of what we talked about earlier with that track efficiency. It's just a different approach of what they're doing on the field. And that's just the way I look at it. I mean, he may be a guy that you walk in and he's got a super high body weight to strength ratio. And he may be a guy that's just another average guy in the weight room, but he's wired tight and he can apply force to the ground like that, and he's gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's funny you said that, Brad, because that's one of the things that John and I discussed again on a previous podcast. Was one thing I can guarantee: you show me somebody who runs 4.4 or better, their strength to body weight is very, very good. Mm-hmm. They may not be the strongest overall, but they are going to be strong relative to their body weight. No question about it.
Mm-hmm. And that's why I think too,
go ahead, Brad.
Well, I was just going to say, and that's why in my training, just to couple that, I think it's very, very important to incorporate activity that is going to emphasize relative body strength. And that's body weight pulls, push-ups, different things you can do with your own body weight. I mean, I've seen kids that couldn't do a single chin-up or a pull-up or even a V-grip. And over time, they're doing it for reps. Their upper body strength takes off. Their shoulder stability takes off. So I think from that standpoint, when you look at it, here's an example. So we'll do testing for high schools, an example, lacrosse teams. And so they'll come in and we'll warm them up. And the reason I do this is as I told the coaches, I'm like, listen, you may have two kids that are equal or close in skill setting. And what's going to separate them? You need to have some type of thing that you can have that's non-subjective to look at the kid and say, okay, this kid's more athletic than this one. You obviously can see it on the field, but you need something black and white that you can show the kid. And unfortunately, you got to show the parents because Johnny didn't make varsity. Why didn't he make varsity? So we do a mobility test just to stand and reach. Keep the back flat. I don't let them round. And you do a mobility test. We do a chin-up test. We'll do a vertical, we'll do a broad, we'll run a 40, and we'll do a shuttle test. And you will see guys that are super tight, extremely tight in the posterior chain, and they have no relative strength. So let's say you've got a guy even if you've got a guy that's average at mobility, but he can rattle off 15 to 20 chin-ups, he's going to test pretty good. Versus another kid that's about the same in mobility, but he can only do 3 chin-ups. So he's not going to be comparable to it. And it all comes down to relative strength. And so I think giving kids an opportunity because let's be honest, it's the easiest body comp test, isn't it? You're either too heavy, you're weak, or unfortunately you're fat and weak. So if you check for kids to look at it and go, okay, do I really need max effort in the weight room when I can't really control my most accessible free weight, my own body weight? So let's maybe back off and work on isolating some things and getting rotator work and getting hip internal, from a hip standpoint. They can get internal, they can get external, they can create a shin angle, getting their feet stronger, getting their glutes stronger while you're trying to get them relatively stronger. And while you're going through that, you're getting great GPP. These kids are really getting in shape because, let's be honest, it's hard work. You can take a kid and put them on the lat pull down and say, okay, we're going to do 5 sets of 12. You take that same kid over to a chin-up bar and you say, we're going to do 5 sets of 12 in the chin-up, or let's say you're not going to do that kind of volume. Let's say we're going to do 10 sets of 5. I guarantee you check heart rate and you look at how they physically look at the end of chin-ups versus a lat pull-down. It's like Howard Cosell to Muhammad Ali in boxing skills. It's completely different. And so when you're looking at it from a GPP and a work capacity standpoint, shit, what better way to get a kid in better shape? That when you get them to the point where you're going to start progressively overloading them, man, they're off and going.
All right.
I'm fired up. I'm ready. I'm coming up there. Let's train. I want to go looking for a 38-year-old guy.
We're doing a hamburger drill. We're going to get gear on and we're getting after it.
Man, an hour has already gone by. Man, I know you got a hard stop here, Brad, so we'll go ahead and wrap this up.
If you guys want to go, let's go. Let's go.
Man, no, I'm ready to come train with you, bro. Like, I'm ready to, let's go. I'm 6'2", I'm 240. Like, I got a 30-inch vertical. I'm ready to go. The NFL's looking for somebody like me.
Hey,
they need a 30-year-old
I'll tell you
veteran.
right now, they've been bypassing you. They're overlooking you.
Yep.
We're going to help.
Hey, story of my life, man.
Bigger.
Story of my life. I've been bypassed. Mom and Dad always said I was the best.
I know my dad said what I know. My mom said, what a treasure. My dad said, yeah, let's go bury him.
Oh man. Brad, where can people find you? Are you active on social still these days?
I am. So I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. We're on Facebook. Next Level, nextlevelathletics.com is our website. You can look up NX Level. On all the social media starts, I'm underneath underneath Next Level Brad or Next Level Arnett. On different ones, and you can find us just about anywhere and take a look at what's going on. And I always encourage coaches too, if you're in the area and you want to come up and hang out and talk shop and just I put it this way: people always say, well, I want to come learn from you. Well, you know what? I want to learn from you too. I mean, there's been so many people that have come in that want to pick my brain on certain things, and I actually end up asking them questions, which provokes so many more conversations. And I look forward to learning from other people too. So anybody's welcome to come in and hang out and talk shop and see what we do, but just know that I'm going to ask you as many questions as you ask me too. So
nice.
I guess in this field, when
awesome.
you don't, in this field, when you get to the point where you quit learning or what you don't know isn't worth knowing, get out, go get a quick trip first at the gas station, because it's going to pass you. Even though so much stuff today is considered cutting edge, was forgotten old. Those are other things I like to talk about.
Yeah. And then, the opposite is almost true. Like, there are so many coaches out there that all they do is just they go to every course, they buy every book, they've done everything, and they can't apply it at all, whatsoever. But they think because they've learned all that, there's a difference between learning and application. So it's an interesting line in our industry.
They'll take that stuff that they're reading and watching and learning, and they'll go back and they'll just throw everything out with the bathwater, and then just take this stuff and incorporate it, or try to incorporate it when it's totally outside their wheelhouse. So their mindset's been one way for years and years and years, and all of a sudden something just clicks in them, and they're like, oh my God, this is the greatest thing ever. So let's get rid of everything I've done for all these years, and I'm just going to strictly go to this. And when it doesn't work right, well, it's kind of like training. You want to hit a peak week and a kid at 80%, and you've done nothing to let them feel that way prior, because you always got to play with their 1RM. Just leave it alone. Let them feel the weight, so that by you get to the point where you're at a peak week, they've been there, done that, and allow them to see and feel some success, versus having to smash their head on the wall and you bump their 1RM 10 pounds and 20 pounds and 15 pounds, and you've gone up 10, 15%, and now we're going to hit a peak week and the kid crashes and burns. Well, what have you done to help the kid? It's not the kid's fault. I know it's a whole other thing, but that's just the way I look at it. As I said, it's, we got to continue to learn and do things to set these kids up for success and feel better about themselves. And hey, listen, when they walk out of here, they shouldn't feel like they just got beat up. I mean, they might physically feel that because they're tired and they're exhausted, but they shouldn't physically. It shouldn't take them the rest of the week to recover from one workout. Because let's be honest, anybody can stand in here and load up a ton of weight, and make a kid puke, and push them and push them and push them. That's not what we're here for.
No. And I wish there were more coaches that took that approach.
Absolutely.
Anybody can make a kid tired. That's not hard.
Yep.
development is what's important. So always great words of wisdom, Brad. Always great to catch up with you, man. So grateful to have known you for all these years. Appreciate you coming back on, and I know we'll do this again. Honestly, we'll probably just do this yearly.
Once a year. There we go.
Yeah,
I'll be looking for another message from me again, Brad.
But,
this time next year.
I love doing this. I appreciate it. You guys are awesome. Like I said, when you can just talk philosophy and talk shop with like-minded people, and even if you're not like-minded, I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, it's when you get to the point where it's either we agree or we disagree, and if we disagree, then I can't talk to you. I mean, you can always agree to disagree, and people are going to have different perspectives and look at things differently. But like I said earlier, when we started this, we got to get in a position where we got to continue to invoke thought and interact with each other and learn from each other. And if nothing else, if it doesn't reinforce that, hey, I'm on the same page as you guys are, or, God, I don't know if that would work for me. You know, whether it's logistics or maybe it's the type of athlete I'm working with or whatever it might be, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's why we do what we do.
Mm-hmm. Invoke thought. That's going to be the take-home message for everybody today.
Yeah, nice.
Invoke thought.
Absolutely. Invoke thought.
Cool. All right, man. Well, I appreciate it, guys. That's going to be the show. I know you got value out of this, so do us a solid. Share the show. Bring us a friend. Appreciate you guys, Brad. Appreciate it as always.
Thank you, guys.